Thank you, Danielle. Thank you very much. So this evening is going to be a challenge for me in a couple ways, and I'm going to go ahead and fess up. The first is, I think when you're over 50 and you get to do something for the first time, it's kind of fun. And this evening I'm wearing 2 microphones for the first time in my life, and it feels a little strange. So when I turn around, you don't get to laugh at me, okay? I also tend to be a little mobile, so sorry, you're just going to have to try to keep up with me. I thank you for being here, sincerely, for a couple reasons. One is that you could have done anything with your time tonight, you chose to be here. And I think that really speaks volumes to purposefully bringing your full self to the place, so thank you. The second is, I think this is a really important topic, and we're seeing more and more of it. And certainly with the Flourish Emory initiative, we're definitely seeing more of it on Emory's campus. I couldn't be more thrilled. I think that this is that the time is right. And as Danielle was sharing, there are really a lot of challenges actually that face each of us, whether it's our undergrad students or if it's masters, PhDs, faculty, staff, pretty much anybody. So I think the other thing that's awesome about this work is that it's applicable to anybody. If you are breathing, you qualify. If you've stopped breathing and you're holding your breath, you still qualify. So when I met with the office, the Center for Women, we kind of tried to, this is a really big topic, and so we said, well, what do we really want to focus on? And I offered lots of possibilities, and we came up with, well, let's talk about women on campus, 18 to 21, and what are the things they're facing, and how might we go about shifting some of that? What are things we can possibly do? So I want you to know that the data tonight that I will share, and I promise not to torture you with it, but I think it's important that you understand I'm not just making this stuff up, that it is those women, and it's a national survey. It's called Healthy Minds. It's been going on since 2007, and Emory has participated actually several times. I don't know if they did this year or not, but it is a massive data set, which is the best part, right? And when I really looked at it, the most interesting thing I saw was that women on campus, whether it was undergrad, master's levels, PhD, the numbers all looked very similar. So I think when we walk through this tonight, you'll start to really go, oh, okay, I see the opportunities. When we think of a flourishing undergrad student, I think of somebody who's full of life. I think of somebody who has light in their eyes, okay? Yes, they understand stress, but they also know how to handle stress, or they know at least some things they can do to combat it. They know how to work hard and play hard, which, okay, fess up. How many of you are really good at working hard and playing hard? All right, okay, all right, fair enough, fair enough. Not everybody does that, you know? All right, I got the rowdy crowd in the back. All right. We got to mic you up in a minute, all right. Anybody who knows me knows that I value social capital above any other form of capital. A flourishing student typically connects with other people and has real connections, not just surface level, but deep, meaningful connections. Flourishing people naturally are happy to help. And I'm sorry, I just saw somebody that I didn't even know managed to sneak in. This is fun. Lifelong learners. How many of you in the room are lifelong learners? Yeah, okay, the hands had to go up for that one because that just made sense. You wouldn't be here otherwise. Upbeat yet realistic, right? Nobody wants the rosy glasses, but nobody wants the Debbie Downer either, so, you know, steady goes. And this is what it really amounts to. This is about healthy success. This is not about sacrificing your well-being, sacrificing friendships, things you love to do. It's about finding, and I know I'm going to say the cliche word of the day, it's about finding balance. But it is about finding a way to do this that doesn't, you know, nobody wants to enjoy success without enjoying success. Kind of makes sense. Let's talk about the flourishing model for a moment, just so that you have the sort of the baseline of what in the world are we even talking about. You'll see that, and I'm not going to I'm not going to make you go through the Latin, I promise, but basically it's the combination of feeling good and functioning well. And when we have, so Epicurus meets Aristotle and they finally agree, all right? This is measured across 3 areas of well-being, and that's social, emotional, and psychological. And the model that we use actually was developed by Dr. Keyes here at Emory. It's sort of the gold standard around the world, and we are fortunate enough to have him as part of our team, but also it's used so much that it's pretty easy to find data sets that allow us to cross-pollinate. So what about flourishing on campus today? Here's the most awesome news I can give you, which is that across all these, and this is almost 100,000 data points, students on campus tend to come to campus flourishing. They're young enough, they're not quite jaded yet, basically, okay? Let's call it what it is. They're just not quite there yet. Give them a little time, but so we do have quite a few who come that way. We are seeing more and more students now who are coming to campus, arriving at campus with a diagnosed mental illness. That's going up. We see more and more students showing up who are already on meds. That's going up. The interesting thing is that, and I want to make this very, very clear, that just because you have a diagnosed mental illness does not mean you cannot flourish. Everybody has a different path. Nobody gets there the same way, but every person can flourish. This 3% languishing group, that's a hard group to work with, bottom line. But it's an important piece that we have to welcome into our fold and to try to help them as well. The moderates are they're neither flourishing nor languishing, okay? So I want you to remember these 3 groups because I'm going to show you different data points. And instead of worrying about the numbers, just look at the differences because that's where the real fun lies. That's the real opportunity. I'm going to look at the 3 different divisions very quickly. The emotional well-being, you see the difference between the flourishers in the green, the moderates, and then the languishing folks. This is about being happy in life. This is about being interested in life and about feeling satisfied with your life. I would suggest, if anybody wants to debate this, but I think there's a substantial gap there that we could help people make up. That's the closest, though, by the way, between the moderates and the flourishers. The differences now get substantially larger. In the social well-being, this is a really interesting one, and we see this in adults, we see this in young people, we see this, I think frankly, it's just a product of some of our society. That the 2 that people struggle with the most is that our society is becoming a better place for everyone. It's kind of hard to agree with that for most folks. The other is that society makes sense, the way it works, that you can make sense of your world. Now, when we say society, that's when it starts to get a little weird. If you say, I can make sense of my own world, yes, I can make sense of my own world, but when we broaden that out and when we talk about people we can't call by first name, then that gets interesting. Once again, we see a substantial difference. I thought the most interesting on this one was something to contribute to society, which is a key piece for each of us contributing our gifts and our talents into the world to make the world a better place, basically, to uplift everyone. So that, I think, is to help somebody move from moderate to flourishing and to help them find that place that they feel like they can contribute, that's a beautiful opportunity. And last is the psychological well-being. Once again, you still see a minimum 2 to 1 with the flourishing students to just the moderates, okay? So these are the students that nobody's paying attention to. The languishing students are probably going to counseling. The flourishing students are out there going, yay, baby. And the moderates are the ones that we're going, well, we sit next to them in class, right? We might sit next to them in a cubicle. We don't know. But because they don't demonstrate either end of this thing, we don't see them. It's the same thing in the business world, by the way. The largest opportunity for lowering healthcare costs, for improving productivity, engagement, talent retention, all those things is to help people move from that moderate bucket into the flourishing. All right, the reality of 30 years ago. A rather personal example, yes indeed. So, you all heard that I have a bachelor's from Emory. That was lovely 1985. I would like to share with you 3 points. One is that I am a first-gen graduate from my immediate family, and so it was a big deal. Come graduation day, we had all but a family reunion on the quad, because back then they did not limit the tickets you could have. And I don't know that I have a living relative alive within 500 miles that did not show up, okay? And that's okay. It was awesome to have them with me because they supported me that day like they had supported me the whole time. The other is that they had very high expectations of me, okay? I don't think it's not unique, it doesn't make me special, but it was very real. And the last thing in the world I wanted to do was let my parents down. I had substantial financial aid to come here. I didn't want to let anybody else down. I was using somebody else's money to get an education, and I took that very, very seriously. So that pressure was, I didn't have that in high school, right? High school was like, yay, okay, make good grades, play on the basketball team, do all those things. I came here and it was and I came from a very small town. So just going to the Kroger was different. It was. The last is that there were challenges all around, things from like a noisy dorm to a young adult trying to figure out, what am I going to eat tonight? Do I have enough money to go out with my friends, or do I need to conserve and do something? These are things that our 18 to 21 think of, I hope anyway. And here's your moment. So I'm going to stand over here. Here we go. So I'm thinking that there's a little difference, okay? There's a few extra pounds, all right, admittedly, not a lot. There's a lot of gray. And there are very, very deep crow's feet from smiling a lot. But I can tell you that what my friends and family couldn't see on the outside was stuff that I worked on for years to help on the inside. Learning to deal with stress, learning to deal with my inner critic, who, oh, by the way, I finally sent to charm school and taught her some manners. If you're going to fuss at me, at least do it nicely. How is today different from 30 years ago? Are the challenges the same? Do they look the same? It doesn't matter if you're a first gen or if you're a legacy here. I want you to pay particular attention to the 3 in the middle, because so the yellow, I threw you a happy wrench here, sorry, but the yellow ones, the gold ones, are actually the aggregate. So of the total population of students, 13% said they'd felt little interest or pleasure in the past 30 days. But the things that struck me were the number of trouble falling asleep or too much sleep, the energy levels, and appetite, because that is a substantial number of people. I mean, one of those is a third of all students. And it didn't matter if you, now granted, it seems like the Flourishers are still riding the right wave, but that's still a substantial number. And then what's the resulting impairment? So this was over the past 4 weeks. How many days did you feel impaired in your academic life or in your home life or in your whatever life, but particularly in academic? And that aggregate number, again, is not small. Fortunately, we had 40% of them who said none, but you see the Flourishers were taking the house on that one. And then this piece really, I think we've all had this person in our world. We've all tried to help this person in our world. We do, but it's fascinating to me. That is just a big, big gap between all of that. Lastly, the mental illness prevalence. These students all answered these questions, and it was a combination of have you been diagnosed in the past 12 months? Have you ever been diagnosed? Or some of the health questions that help derive this if somebody hadn't been diagnosed. The thing that struck me most here is the GAD number, the generalized anxiety number, because the US number is about 3.1%. So if we have 9% presenting with this, and the older population, basically the adult population in the US is only at 3.1%, and we know that women are twice as likely as men to actually develop generalized anxiety disorder, helping people flourish at least seems to help them put on a suit of armor for some of this stuff. Again, as we discussed earlier, just because you've been diagnosed doesn't mean you can't flourish, but let's get to them before that happens, and let's help them build these muscles, these mental habits, these awesome habits to help put on that suit of armor to protect from these things. This was the other one that struck me, and again, I could have tortured you guys with 5 hours of data, I assure you, but I was trying to be nice. This is the difference between people who perceived a need for some form of mental help and then people who actually went for some form of therapy. And you see the gap. And so if we just look at the gap there, I think that's another important question we need to be asking ourselves. We know that this is the age group that's least likely to seek help, unfortunately. So we have to find some way to help them develop good, strong habits and tools in the toolbox, if you will, so that even if they're not going to ask for help, they're going to get it somehow. The good news is, for a number of people, they felt like their friends would stand behind them and would really try to help them. Again, once again, you see that the green bar is the far flyer on the right. And the same is true for emotional support and help from family. I shared with you earlier, I felt very blessed that way, that while I also felt the pressure, I could always, my mom spoiled me to death when I was a freshman in college here, seriously. I got a care package once a week, and I got a letter almost every day, okay? Yeah. That is a special woman, no doubt. So how do we help change the situation? Maybe I should ask this question first. Is there anybody here tonight who thinks we shouldn't change the situation? Okay, just checking. This is, I had time this past week or so, I think it was last week, I don't know, middle of the month, with my fun friend Dana Barrett on her business radio show here in Atlanta. And other than having to go to Buckhead to do it, not my favorite place to drive, but we had some fun with this, and there was another person who joined us in the studio at that time, and we were talking about the Simply Flourishing practice and all these pieces, and I said, well, it's really important to understand it's a process, not an event. Kind of like, why doesn't training stick? Training, 10% retention, coaching can be perfect in some situations, but it's also very expensive to try to do for everybody. So, but understanding that behavioral change is a process. I'm still looking for the elusive exercise that I can do for 1 or 2 hours each month, and then I don't have to exercise anymore for the whole month, right? And if I find it, I promise I'll share it with every one of you. I promise. But it is a process. This is about, research and education and changing our brains and all kinds of stuff. And it doesn't happen overnight. That's one of the hardest things. So you look at a student and go, hey, I'm going to add some weight to the work you already have, and they're going to go, oh, no. But if they understand that developing a few of these things can actually help them not feel overwhelmed, get their work done more effectively, actually enjoy it, and so on, I think that that's really the conversation. And lovely Aristotle, right? It's what we do every day. We are our own habits. I love this Maya Angelou just because I think it just hits the nail on the head that says, this isn't passive, okay? You gotta be involved. Now, it's not quite like training for a marathon, I promise. It's not at all. But we do have to do something. It's an active process. And I'm going to, believe it or not, we're just zooming through this. It's kind of fun. I think that this is the other one that hit Dana really hard, and I thought I'd share it with you guys, which is seeking happiness rarely brings about meaning. But seeking meaning, typically we find happiness. And having both happiness and meaning is what flourishing is all about. So our two mantras, it's a process, not an event, and seek meaning, find happiness. I have people ask me this all the time. I threw this in at the very last minute, but I thought I would share this with you guys before we get into our worksheets on the table and we start working through that. People ask me, what do you do? So I chose some of my favorites. One of them is three deep breaths. If I just find myself in a twirl, I'm like, whoa, hang on. Yep. And sometimes I catch myself actually having to go to 3, really going, no, do it again. No, do it again. The important thing is that I can do that anywhere. I can do that in an airport, I can do that in my car, I can do that while I'm talking to Wendy on the phone and driving through traffic going, I wonder why that person did that. And she's going, blow the horn, right? Seriously, these are things that a student sitting about to take an exam can do this, right? You just had a rough conversation with, I don't know, somebody, you know, that you work with or whatever. Oh, that's happened, has it? Okay, all right. Just checking. Name no names, it's all good. The other is this is a Bella Ruth Nepperstack piece. I don't know if any of you are familiar with her guided meditations, but if you've ever heard the voice once, if you ever hear it again, you'll know it. But she talks about, and it's not hers, but that's where I got it from, is the neutral lens of the camera, to be able to look at a situation and say, let me just be a reporter here. Let me try to get all my stuff out of the middle of the circle and back up. And it also helps that I am a photographer, so I can really get into this one and go, okay, got it. Look, what do you see? Remove the emotion, and I can put it back in. I'm not suggesting that we stuff it or do away with it. I'm just saying, step away from it for just a second. Give yourself, you know, if you can give yourself 60 seconds of this, it's pretty amazing what happens. Loving kindness meditation, one of my favorites. When I spoke here on campus this past spring with a group of the sorority women here on campus, and I don't know, the room was such an interesting feel. I went, hey, you guys want to experience something? They're like, sure, right? So that's when you know you got them, right? Like, sure. And we did, this is a very simple one and it has different stages to it, but the concept is, may you be happy. May you be healthy. May you live with ease. And to be able to point that toward a person, maybe somebody I don't know yet, somebody I do know, maybe somebody I've had a conflict with, maybe somebody I love dearly. But I also try to turn it around all the way back to me, because that's one of the places that I don't necessarily do enough of that compassion work, is back toward myself. I heard Dean Nair speak a couple months ago at one of the other Flourish Emory events. And after his lecture, I walked up and he said, what'd you get out of it? And I said, I think, if I heard right, is that we need to seek our sameness first and then celebrate our differences later. And he looked at me and laughed and said, I think you totally summed up my whole talk in 2 sentences. Like, yay. And he smiled and said, apparently it's something that's not foreign to you. And I said, no, actually that's something that I try really hard to do in the world. And I encourage each of you to do this. It is not hard. It just is a little strange at first. And that is, when you first meet somebody, try to find something you have in common. You always have something in common. At a minimum, you are breathing the same air, okay? So you always have something in common. But seriously, all of us can find something. We might be from different cultures, different ages, whatever. There's always something we can find that allows us to be grounded in a space together before we try to do anything else. Lastly, expressing gratitude. I think that this is one of the most underutilized, simple tools in the world, and it is pretty simple for me to say, thank you for being here. For a student to say thank you to a professor, I think is probably unheard of, because I can't remember ever doing that one. That's not true. That's not true. Dr. Kilgore, all right, I take that back. I take that back. I just happened to think of that, totally. All right, so she was one of my sociology professors here at Emory, and she was awesome. I had good teachers, that's not the point. I just didn't have that kind of relationship with them. I was pre-med. You know, pre-med is like the chewing machine around here. It's, well, it is. It still is, I'm sure. That didn't change. But being able to express gratitude, it could be as simple as saying thank you and really meaning it to the person who just served you a drink, or to the person who helped you out at work and did you a huge favor. I mean, really take the time. If you've got extra time, write them a note. Don't send them an email. Well, you can, but if they're good with it, that's okay. I think that's one of the things that I'm having to even rework my own brain around, is that people communicate in different ways. And so if that's not going to be something that's weird to them, then go for it. If a handwritten note's going to mean something to them, do it. On Dana's radio show, the gentleman, Brandon Smith, who actually teaches here at Emory in the B School, part-time anyway, he was on the first hour of the show, and he had Dana do something, and I don't know where we are on time. But if you guys are willing to try an experiment, we'll try something really weird before we get into the other exercises. Yeah? Oh, we definitely got time. Okay, beautiful. So here's what I want you to do. I'm going to do something no speaker in the world ever does. I'm going to encourage you to get your phone out. I'm okay even if it rings by accident, because I've asked you to get it out, okay? But I want you to get it out. And I'm totally stealing Brandon's piece here, okay? Totally. I'm owning it. But I thought it was so fun. All I want you to do is think of one person in the world that you would like to just say to them, I'm grateful you're in my world. Send them that text and wait to see what comes back. We'll take a minute, send it out, it's okay. If you want to do 2, that's okay. You can totally overachieve, it's all right. So when my friend Dana did this, she texted 2 people. One was a guy she doesn't see often, and he doesn't live here anymore, and they don't talk a lot. But so she sent him this text that basically said, I really want you to know I really appreciate you, and I'm grateful for you. And his immediate response within about 60 seconds was, are you okay? I'm hoping not. Well, some of you might get the, are you okay? Is everything all right? So let it sit. We'll see how many we get, but that is so simple. You could do that once a day. You're going to get something out of it. They're going to get something out of it, and it costs you basically 30 seconds of time and maybe a quarter of a whatever in minutes or whatever. I can't imagine anybody doesn't have unlimited data plans anymore. But before we launch to the next piece, will you guys, some of us are still texting, okay. This is what I invited. It wasn't, I'm grateful for you. It's like, let me tell you the 3 reasons why I'm really grateful for you, and then let me tell you the minor reasons, and then, right, yeah. So, my friends tease me a little bit about the whole, okay, are you right? That should be an email, okay? That's too long. It should be an email. That's not a text. It's not a text. Stop doing that. I would like to know before we move to the next section if anybody has any questions, any comments, any insights you'd like to share. Yes?
Well, I do have a question about the general nature of those people who just come to this world flourishing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what is it about their makeup that makes them so different from the other 2 groups?
So this is the slippery slope of epigenetics, but we'll do it, which is there are genetic predispositions toward certain parts of this for sure, okay? Much like any, let's say asthma runs in your family, right? Genetics loads the gun and environment pulls the trigger, right? This is very much the same for part of it, not all of it. Scientists still argue between 40 and 50% of it you just got, and then the other part, but that still leaves a lot to work with. The other piece is, I hate to say this for all the introverts in the world, but being an extrovert actually gives you a leg up also. It's not a huge leg, but it's a leg. And that plays into the social components more than anything. But I know that I know there's at least 2 introverts in this room who have done a fine job of moving well into awesome social capital and social relationships and deep, they're good. It just took a while to figure out how to do that. As a young person, that's one of the more fascinating pieces that I've been coming to campus a lot lately and talking with different people and deans and sororities and fraternities and all manner of folks. And it's interesting to me, I've become the I don't know, sort of the, hey, she's fun and it's an interesting conversation. Sure, buy her a cup of coffee. It's interesting to me how many young people come, well, and the residence housing folks, the RAs and the RHDs for sure with this, it's interesting how many young people come to campus and don't know how to make friends. And suddenly now they're lonely and they're homesick and they're and that is one of those things that I know Emory is seriously making an effort to try to solve in some of the dorms. But I had imagine that, I had no problem when I got here. I also had a total cheat that I had several other governor's honors people who came to Emory the same year I did. I had 2 on my hall. So we had instant friends, and then, you know, it didn't take long to meet other folks on the hall and whatever. But, and I played sports here and some other stuff, so a lot of those things help. But back to your original question, part of it really is genetics. A lot of it's how you're raised. I know that there are a few people in the room who will believe this, but when I was a child, I was very quiet. I felt weird. I tried to have conversations with people, and they would just look at me, and I'm like, okay, great. I'll get my guitar and go serenade the cows. It's all good. But it took a long time to sort of find the voice, and be comfortable in the skin, and go, okay, no, this is good. This is good. So I think that, bottom line, that our genetics do play a big part, but I think there's a bigger piece that doesn't get talked about a lot, which is how willing you are to be vulnerable. You know, lovely little Brene Brown moment here, but if you're willing to open up, and again seek sameness, right, kind of stuff, but to experience new things. Sometimes experiencing new things is a little scary, and if you're oh, I knew I was going to do that. If you're closed chest, it's hard to let those experiences in. So I think helping people feel safe is a key. Yes?
How much do you think social media affects somebody's ability to flourish? Does it help or
That's a two-edged sword, I think. I really do. I think if people use it in healthy doses.
Paula, could you repeat the question?
Sure, thank you. The question was, does social media help or hinder people from flourishing? I really do think it's how it's used and how it's misused, potentially. That probably is the bigger question there. I can tell you that one of the things that I suggest to people from time to time is a media diet. If it's starting to chew up too many cycles, or if you realize it's, again, some of this is just self-awareness, right? If you're like, ooh, I spent 22 minutes on Facebook and I don't feel any happier. I feel, if anything, I feel frustrated. I can't believe that person posted that thing, you know. Then it's time to step back. Years ago, I actually made a conscious decision to stop watching the news. I don't watch the news. I have a posse of people, believe me, it's amazing, who feel compelled to let me know if something in the news happens that qualifies on 2 points. Can I do something about it? And does it actually impact the world in a way that I'm going to care about, right? So, and I really kind of have them reversed. It's like, well, I care about this, but can I do something about it? If I can, send it to me. I'm all over it, right? I'll find a way to jump in. But I think that it's important that we all recognize that there are plenty of things in the world we honestly can't do anything about, and when that terrible negative stuff pouring in, it's really hard to let the positive show back up, which is why a lot of these things are about that positive thing. I did not give you my total life hack, which was, and it's just part of what I do each day, which is 3 things I'm grateful for. And I try to say them out loud to whoever is involved with it, if I can. Or, it's simple. Again, it costs nothing other than a little bit of time and maybe an email, a text, a phone call, or something. Yes?
The data you presented, I think I might have missed in the beginning. Was that students who are 18 to 21 in traditional Montana University? Was that here at Emory?
It's both. Thank you. So the question is, the data set, is it just here at Emory? Is it just private colleges? And the answer is no. It's actually private colleges and public universities. It's national. And Emory has participated at least 3 times, I know. I don't know if they did this year or not. Yes. They actually have, the data set is anybody who's on campus who's a student. But I isolated, based on what we talked about, I said, well, let's pick one lens. And so all of this data was 18 to 21. Yes?
18 to 21-year-old females?
Females, yes. 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 Goodness, this is an active table. I'm just wondering, Okay, so the question is, basically the bottom line to this is how much of this is objective and how much of this is subjective. And I'm going to posit that if you think your world is not good, it doesn't matter if it's objective or subjective at that moment, right? What's that?
The flourishing part.
Oh, that's interesting. It's, well, the data, this assessment's been used over and over with all kinds of populations. The Canadian government uses it every 2 years to actually plan their mental well-being programs across the country. They look for pockets where people are not flourishing and they go, oh, okay, what does this group need? And because this is all about focusing on the positive. This is about focusing on strengths. It's like find your core strengths, work from there, and then you can build all the other muscles. I was clearly not going to play football, but I could play basketball, right? So learn to do that and do it well, and then move on. Any other, yes? This is an active table, my goodness.
I have a question about the operational term that you use to set the stage for your conclusion.
Okay.
There's the traits that you use to identify, or people use to identify themselves as either flourishing or languishing.
Okay.
The trait that you identify, or that you were selected to identify flourishing, had to do heavily with social awareness, right?
Actually, I will give you the formula. You have to let me back up a little half sec here. I didn't think to do it the other way. Okay, so in order for a person to be considered flourishing, they have to answer almost every day or every day in one of these three, which is the emotional, and in 6 of the remaining that are across social and psychological. So the social and psychological is that functioning well, and the emotional part is the feeling good. So the hedonic and the eudaimonic.
Okay,
So it's a formula basically, which is also why no two people probably get there the same way.
well, there seems so ambiguous. Warm and trusting relationships, good at managing life at 21, a challenge to grow and become better. They seem, from my perspective, if you don't forgive me.
No, I'm good with this.
They seem tautologies. They don't seem to be concrete, discrete, truth functions assessment, right?
So,
Okay.
go ahead.
No, that was the one element that struck to me right away.
Okay.
Then the second part that you suggested is that there's an element of genetics involved. There's
Right.
a physiological component
Right.
to the construct of these social things. And then the prescriptive element that you suggest, which is therapy.
For people who are languishing?
For people who are languishing.
Yes.
That's the
Okay.
parts of the trait that you use to, the operational term that you use to define languishment. Why therapy? Well, is there a bias right there? If there is a physiological component and several ambiguous terms to define flourishing and languishing, why therapy? How does therapy address the physiological aspects of it?
So allow me to back up in two ways. And so did anybody catch this question, or shall I try to pull it back together? It was a big one. The first piece is that, again, we're using an assessment that's been validated actually down to age 14, so we know that the 18 to 21s can do it. It started as a huge, huge assessment and finally got boiled down to those 14 questions. And the internal validity, all the other happy stuff has been done for years. This has been used for almost 16 years now. They are questions that people can very easily answer and just say, over the past 30 days, how often did you feel this? And now, if you've had a really bad day or a really bad week, and then you answer this, you might not find your proper space because it's all about perspective, okay? The other piece is that when I suggested the counseling piece or something is because there is a point at which I am a firm believer in mind over matter, obviously, or I wouldn't be saying go for the positive, because the more we focus on the positive, we know that the neural pathways get all rerouted and all kinds of happy things. So from a biological perspective, I totally get that part. But sometimes people are so far down that what we don't want is that big group who is perceiving that they need help, but they're not asking for it, they're not seeking it. Because unfortunately, those are the ones that are our suicide rates. and I didn't go there tonight, I decided to not do that, but there's a substantial difference. I mean, you can imagine the number of people who self-identify as flourishing, the number is like not there. The languishing folks, it was like 75 times more likely to at least have suicide ideation. So we have to have some kind of a catch net for those folks. It may not be, there's a lot of different forms of therapy. There's a lot of different forms of, sometimes all somebody really needs is for somebody to say, hey, I care about you. I really care about you, and I'm going to prove it to you that I care about you. I want you to spend at least 1 hour every day with me for the next 7 days, and let's just talk about anything you want to talk about. You find a friend like that, you got a real friend, because not everybody in the world wants to take that on. So I think when I said that, I do believe that there are things sometimes that we have to take a bigger measure in order to get people kind of, it's like a boat. You have to kind of like help them get back up on keel. And then once you're there, okay, now we can talk about what are the many other ways that we could work. And I'm not suggesting for a minute that somebody who's languishing couldn't benefit from the exercises we're about to do or any of those other things that I had up here. They can totally benefit from it. It's just getting them to connect to it. I think that's the challenge. But thank you for the question. Any others? Or I'm about to go over. Woo. Well, that's okay. It may be that there are 2 on the table. So let me set this up for you. There are 2 exercises on the table. One of them is called 3 Questions for You. And the other is opportunity versus obligation. And I would suggest, actually, based on our time, that we're doing okay. You guys read over them for a minute. We'll have a consensus moment. That's always fun. Oh, goodness. You're taking notes. You're having fun over here. Okay. So the 3 questions for you is one of those. It's very much very similar to the gratitude piece, but it is it's set up a little more for you to decide what's really important in your world. When you're seeking meaning to find happiness, how do you know you found meaning, basically? So what are the things that stand out to you? One of those questions on there of, did I have a positive effect today that has a lasting effect to it? Did I do something good that has a long tail to it? Is, for me, a really important question. I know it got really quiet. And the opportunity versus obligation one is really about, it's about 2 things. One of them is about, don't worry, I'm going to give you time with it, I promise. I'm just trying to set this up a little bit anyway. For anybody who feels overwhelmed, at least once a week, right? Right. I find this very true for people who are working professionals, and if you have children, pets, elderly parents, you name it, that adds the extra dimension onto it. Or if you're very involved in your community or whatever, you suddenly find yourself going, wait a minute. I've set myself up with a lot of these expectations, right? And if you want to lose the joy in service to somebody else, let it become an expectation. Because that has 2 legs to it, typically. One is that you don't bring your best stuff to it, and the other person now expects it of you. So you don't get, that gratitude isn't necessarily there. It might be, but so the idea here is to think of the things that you've already said yes to, and then you get to decide which of those things, what of those things can I actually delegate to somebody else? Could somebody else in my family do this? Could somebody in my community do this? And once you've kind of called that off, and if you're willing to let go of that, right? That's always a good question. Then the other end of this is the next time you're doing something that feels like washing the dishes, washing the clothes, taking the dog out, whatever. Some of these things you just have to do, unless you are fortunate enough to have somebody who will come do them for you, but you know, they're just part of life. And the idea is to reframe this. I had a fun conversation. How many of you guys in the room know Mark Corden with the Flourishing? Oh, there's the Flourish crowd. Okay, all right, okay. He's one of the folks with the Flourish Emory group. He couldn't be with us tonight, unfortunately. He is ill, and he was really bummed out, and he sent me a text about an hour ago and said, I'm really bummed out. I can't be there. But Mark and I were talking about this probably 2 months ago. And I said, so imagine that it's, you're going to reframe this a little bit. You're going to say, hey, let's say it's folding the clothes, okay? Just picking a random thing. But now I have a personal philosophy that I developed back in the late 90s and early 2000s because of a terrible burnout, okay? And my philosophy is, if we're not having fun, we're not doing it right. I really do believe that. I do. I will put on headphones and I will vacuum because that's about the only way I can stand to do it, okay? But it's like, okay, yay. But I also have to, I put it in my head of think of the other people who are going to benefit from this effort and to bring them in, right? And to be happy to be of service to them. Now it's not a chore anymore. Now it's something I'm doing, and yes, I mean, it's not exactly still in my favorite thing. But if I can connect to the people who benefit from it and why I'm doing it, and really reframe that, and the kicker is, if you really want to juice it up, is in your own mind to say, if this were the last time I was ever going to do this, ever, what kind of effort would I want to bring to it? And talk about vacuuming in a hurry, woo, yeah, singing and going, right? I know it will not be the last time I vacuum. However, it's just a perspective. So that was when Mark asked me if I wanted to come be his running coach. He's like, this might work. I'm like, yeah. So you have 2 exercises. I would suggest that you pick one, get your phone back. Oh, wait, how many of you got a message back from whoever you said, look? 1, 2, okay. And all right, look at this. And were they fun messages? Did anybody say, are you okay? Oh, we have 2 winners. I love it. Are you okay? Yeah, I'm okay. Oh, that's hysterical. That's good stuff. Okay, here, I'm going to ask for a weird commitment, all right? For the next 7 days, starting today, you get first day, right? We're going to punch your little ticket already, right? For the next 6 days, make it a point just to stop at some point during the day and send one of those text messages. Just watch what happens. It's very fun. And especially if you can think of somebody you don't talk to all the time, but somebody who matters to you, and go, hey, I really appreciate you. And maybe if enough people come back and say, are you okay? That might be an indicator that you might pick 2 people, I don't know. Have a 3-a-day vitamin, I don't know. Anyway, I want you guys to take, because you got to have some device for timing, that's the whole point. Because if not, you'll get lost in this. So pick one of the 2. If you can take both home with you, obviously, but pick one of them. And I'm going to go be quiet for a few minutes, which I know is going to be fascinating. If anybody has any questions, just, I don't know, throw a flag, raise a hand, send me a text, I don't know. I do encourage you guys to take these home, and definitely, I hope you find at least one of them useful, maybe both. It's one of the more fascinating things, again, with the whole no 2 people get to that flourishing space or stay in that flourishing space by using the same strengths or recognizing the things like, well, that's something I should definitely pay attention to. Before we wrap up, I would love to know if anybody has any other questions, any comments, anything you want to just share. I'm good with that. I'll bring them up. Oh, okay.
Would you please, I've heard you say this before, and I think it might be important for folks to know. If not, you can just ignore me.
Okay. No.
No, about the people that are flourishing, how it's important for them to also do these things and continue to flourish. What happens if they backslide?
So the backslide is not a good thing, is the bottom line, all right? That's the easy way. You are actually 3 times, if you are in a flourishing space and you backslide all the way to the languishing space, you are more than 3 times more likely to develop a mental illness and within a 12-month period, boom. Right, so that is a dangerous, slippery slope. Nobody wants you on it, okay? So for people who are flourishing, it's funny because in the work that Wendy is here with me also. Wendy Watkins is one of the partners in the Simply Flourishing group, and one of the things that we find fascinating is that when people get their results back and they see that they're flourishing, they go, "Oh yay! Okay, now I can just go back to doing everything I was doing." Like, no, not really. Well, maybe. I mean, if you're staying there, if you're strong and you're staying there, that's awesome. But for people who life can, let's face it, life can throw us some really weird curveballs, okay? I have stories that could curl your hair, but I won't torture you with them, I promise. But it's important that we build that sense of resilience, that sense of strength in the face of weird adversity that you just didn't see coming. So I want to be as strong as I can be mentally, because that helps me in everything I do. It helps me in my social world, it helps me in my work, it helps me deal with my dad, who I love dearly, but he's aging, and we're getting into that flipping of the parent-child discussions, or power or something. I don't really know what to explain it. So that's one of the pieces that Pam is bringing up that's really important. That just, if you are flourishing, find ways to stay there. Stop and think about the things you already do, right? And if you look across those dimensions of what makes you feel happy, and is there something that you like to do that makes you happy, but you're just not making time for it, put it back in. It might be, there are some things, seriously, we can do in 10, 15 minutes that make us much happier, much more pleasant to be around, So it's like, okay, take the time, make a list of those things. I love that. When I first started as a serious student of positive psychology years ago, a long time ago, one of the first things I did was I took the VIA assessment, the values in action, and you can find it, you can just Google it. It's actually pretty awesome in itself, in that it helps people identify their top 5 strengths that's out of the whole nomenclature, basically the backbone of positive psychology. So it's character traits and virtues. And it helps when you identify those, and the real next beautiful step is find a way to use those all the time. Find new ways to use them. So that was actually when I discovered that one of the weakest points I had was gratitude. And right? Right? Well, because fortunately I think what you're saying is that's not how you think of me. Right, okay. Yay. I made a very purposeful trek for about 3 years of finding different ways and deeper ways that I could express my gratitude, and that I did it purposefully. And that's one of the other things that I didn't really hit to that purpose part, but I think you guys got it. This is an active step. It's not passive. You have to want to do it. You have to find things, and it doesn't have to be drudgery. That's the other fun part. I mean, there are things that everybody in here can find something that they could do that would make them stronger and more, either move toward that flourishing space or stay in it, that you actually enjoy. You just don't think about it. So I took the time to write out on little cards all kinds of things I could think of, and some of them now are so ingrained in my day I don't even think about them. They just happen. Yes?
This brings to mind an article I recently read. I think it was at UPenn.
Okay.
They called it their pen face.
Okay.
Like everybody was so flourishing and so happy and so smart, and everybody on Facebook was so happy all the time. And so it was really what the university noticed is it was really not cool to be vulnerable.
Right.
So I guess I'm just wondering if that's being addressed in the Flourish M, where you let's all be super flourishing.
So if you think back to the second slide I had up here, it was about being a realistic optimist, basically, right? If you put on the rose-colored glasses and you become the weird Pollyanna, nobody will take you seriously, and they don't know what to do with you. And they shouldn't know what to do with you, because life isn't like that. Life is not a bowl of crazy cherries all the time. And so there are 2 weird phenomenons on Facebook of which I'm aware. One of them is basically saying, my life is awesome, see, you stink, right? Which is why people post certain things. I mean, it's very, right? Like, well, thank you for posting that, but Okay, cool. We're out of here. The other is that people tend to get into weird. Nobody wants to say I'm unhappy. It's like and I didn't even get into this tonight either, but there was a fascinating piece in this data that just knocked me for a loop. I'm not going to kid you. I sat with it for probably an hour and a half, 2 hours. I just had to sit with it and go, I'm not getting this. Which is we all know that there's a stigma around the concept of mental health, okay? No matter how hard I try to do, mental health is not the same thing as mental illness. It is a dual continuum. The absence of mental illness does not mean necessarily the presence of mental health, okay? Yeah, I can preach that all day long, but we say mental health, people hear mental illness. And one of the questions on this survey, on this Healthy Minds piece, is a person who has sought help for mental health, that's a personal failure. And I was blown away because even among the people who were flourishing, almost half of them agreed with that. Yes. Now that's enough. Now we start to understand a little more about that whole piece of people perceiving they need help but then not getting it, is because if you the flourishers, okay, these are supposed to be the people who get it, right? There is nothing in the world wrong with seeking help when you need it. That's like saying I broke my leg but I don't want to go to the doctor. Makes no sense. I had a car wreck. No, I'm fine. I'll just go home. No. The sad part is that I didn't turn the timer off a little while ago. Apparently, I need to know more about this crowd right here. I don't know. You guys are loving life, that's for sure. So I think that from the Flourish Emory perspective, I think that for any campus to start to have a real meaningful change with the discussion around flourishing, moderate well-being, languishing, how do we all come together, is we've got to address that stigma piece and head on. We have got to have that conversation head on about, we got to change some attitudes, and it's not going to happen overnight. It's not. But it's going to take more and more people stepping up and going, this was my journey, and I want, people that we respect and admire and going, this was my journey, and I'm willing to share that with you because I think maybe you'll learn something from it.
But it's not just like people putting on the mask.
No. If anything, the mask is one of the most unhealthy things people can ever do. But I'm sure we've all seen colleagues who've done it. I mean, again, I had a terrible burnout years and years ago that it was a combination of the iron happy mask. It wasn't really happy. It was just, I was pleasant. I was there. I was getting my job done. I was rocking the house, people. I wasn't just getting my job done. I was rocking the house. But I was as engaged as my toothbrush. And I realized I couldn't do that. I'm like, whoa, okay. My life is way too short to be doing something that I feel nothing about and that I derive no real pleasure from, and that doesn't have necessarily, again, one of my important things, a good long-lasting impact, positive impact. I want to know that if I'm doing something that it's not like a bowl of soup. It's like, oh, you ate the soup, gone. No, I want it to be something I want to be a tree that just keeps growing. I want it to be something that's positive, that keeps giving, as opposed to it's a process, not an event. I want that to fly out. But the Facebook, all of social media, I think in many ways is a sort of a strange, detached version of, I don't ever want anybody to see that I'm sad, that I'm unhappy, that I'm frustrated. So we put on the electronic face, and that's a very dangerous game. Anybody else? Oh, all right, Miss Carla.
If I understood you, on one of the early slides, it talked about flourishers having these kind of deep, meaningful social connections.
Right.
What can a person do to foster those type of connections?
What a great question. So the question is, deep, meaningful social connections, what are things that people can foster to do that? I will tell you one of my absolute favorites, and that is, I'm going to do a show of hands before I do it, right? If If you live in a condo, it's going to mean your floor. And if you live on a street, it's going to mean your street, okay? I want to see a show of hands of who knows every single person on their street or on their floor in a condo. Okay? We all live at the Artisan. You can't help but know your neighbors. Yeah, you can't help but know your neighbors. One of the most amazing things you can do is go meet your neighbors, okay? Seek your sameness with them. Find what you have in common. Find out what they like to do. Find out, I don't know, they have a dog, they have a cat, they have kids. What do they love to do in the world? So there's a weird statistic that the more people you know, the more people who are known to you, like that you could say hello to, within a 15-mile radius of your home, has a dramatic correlation with the crime rate. So the more people know their neighbors, and not just your next door neighbor, and not just the one on your street, but I don't know how many of you read Robert Putnam's book, Bowling Alone, but the concept of the garage in a house has been terrible. People drive in, they don't even have to come outside to get in their home. So it's zoom, it's like the Batcave. They go in and you don't see them. You might get a glimpse of them when they come out to get the mail, but it's not often. People don't gather at the mailbox or meet out at the street or whatever. You guys get the point. So that's one thing I think that's easy to do, and it's really smart because you're not only elevating your own social capital, you're helping that person out also. And I hope in a very weird sort of way, you're also lowering the potential of crime rate in your neighborhood. Hey, nothing wrong with that. Another piece I think is to stop and think about what you do professionally and where you might go meet new people who either belong to that profession or have absolutely nothing to do with it, right? Find something that you care about in the world, go find other people who care about that. Nothing feels like a community. There's just nothing in the world like it. Find ways to help your neighbors. Find ways to volunteer in your community. Some of the folks here who are busy raising their hands, quite a few of us live in the city of Decatur, in downtown Decatur. And it's fascinating to me how, when we look at civic health, and we look at people volunteering, voting, participating in a philanthropic capacity, all these things, know their neighbors, care about their neighbors, live on the school board for, what, oh my goodness, 12 years? Yeah. That kind of service takes, that's real dedication. But it's also an amazing way of enriching your local community while you're also enriching your own soul. So I'd say find ways to volunteer, find ways to participate, actively participate, not passive. Again, it's on purpose. It really is on purpose. Great question. Whew, you guys are getting me tonight. Hey, oh, another. Okay. A shameless plug, all right.
Hi. My name is Bria Gerald. I'm a member of the Flourishing Steering Committee, and I'm also a coordinator for our main program, Happiness Bootcamp. And so at Happiness Bootcamp, we pretty much talk about these concepts, and also we cover things like resilience, grit. We've been working with people from the Integrity Project to incorporate integrity into our curriculum, building healthy relationships. And so I just want to say that our facilitator applications are open, and we have open arms for graduate students, undergraduate students, any faculty or staff who would like to facilitate or just work with us on Happiness Bootcamp. And so if you would like more information about that, you can come and talk to me after this.
Oh, okay.
Again, this is not a question,
Okay.
but something to support what Paula said, and it's about gratitude. Okay, so I'm a retired Emory faculty member. I live in the neighborhood. I take lots of walks on Emory campus. One of the things I really enjoy is the beautiful flowers all over campus, but particularly at the official entrance in Emory Village. I mean, just spectacular. And so I've been enjoying them for years. One day, I walked by, there were 2 or 3 people working there, the flowers, and I just had this burst of an idea. And I walked up to them and I said, I walk by here a lot, all seasons, and I
Thank you. Yeah, I have a total personal hack when I have to call. I'm a individual Kaiser member, okay, and that has some awesome ups and it has some weird oh boys. And so if I have to get on the phone and call them, the first thing I do as soon as I get a human is I get their name and like, you know, Janice, right? Janice, I want to thank you in advance for your help today. I feel confident we can solve this, and I'm really appreciative of your efforts. I have set her up like a bowling pin, okay? But she's ready. She's ready now, and I don't do it rudely. It's sincere. It's like boy, I hope we can solve this in the first time, right? That would be awesome. But Carla, I happen to think of another one that I want to figure out how to do this on Emory's campus, and I don't know yet, but I'm going to figure it out somehow because I don't want to be the only one that people want to call campus security on when I'm walking around campus. And that is something that I do in downtown Decatur all the time, which is, and I walk everywhere, is I walk to my office, I walk everywhere, is when I see somebody on the street, doesn't matter if I know them or not, I say good morning or good afternoon, and I look them in the eye, it's sincere, and about half the time I get a blank stare. And sometimes I get people who all but like, whoa, okay. And other times I get people who just go, wow. And we're moving, right? Wow, good morning. Right. Like, do I know you? It is a wonderful thing to do. It costs nothing, okay? Again, crow's feet, I earned them. Smile, greet people, just greet them. On this campus here, I promise, when I do it, I did it on the way here tonight, and every single person looked down and just kept moving. And we gotta be able to change that somehow. Seriously, that's just, yes, please.
I unfortunately have found that if I respond to men who smile at me and say, hey baby, how you doing?
Oh, well.
I'm in trouble.
Okay. I don't even know where to take that. I think if somebody looks at you with respect and says, good morning, good afternoon, whatever. I don't even know what I would do with that. I'd probably just go, okay, right, moving on. Sure. Well, it also has to be sincere. There's no point in doing it when it's not sincere. I mean, I can't even get my head wrapped around that. I'm so sorry. That's frustrating. But maybe it does. Okay, all right. Well, I'm amazed because people will be like looking forward, and I will greet them somehow, and it's just boom. I'm like, all right. I'm going to win out yet. I'm going to get at least one person that doesn't know me on this campus who's going to say something. It might be boo, I don't know, but we're going to get something out of them. I thank you all. I always enjoy things like this, but this was just a treat in so many ways. I hope that you got something that you could take home with you today. I hope that there's something that will stick with you. I sincerely hope that you will, if you want another copy of any of the things that you got, there's some more up here, but also I'm happy to email it to you if you say, hey, send me that thing. The bottom line is that we have a big work to do. There's a lot of opportunity. And I think there's a lot of things we can be doing, and some of them don't require Herculean lifts. They're simple things that if we are conscious about it, we make a point of it, we make a commitment to it, and we actually do it, that we really can change the world. And I invite you to join us in doing that. Thank you.